Welcome to Lunch Break with the Candidates. Before we begin today's interview, I would like to note that with each interview you hear this week, the candidates were given the same question in regards to their respective office and allowed the same amount of time to answer each question. So I'm here today with Chief of Police candidate Terry Franklin. Mr. Franklin, thank you for being here today. So let's get started with the questions today. Do you believe the city charter should be changed by the voters to give full authority of the police department to the chief?
Yes, I do. And here's why I think that. I think that the people, we voted to have an elected chief. Charter, we voted the charter in that the chief was elected. And apparently, in the process of doing that, we have somehow, it wasn't wrote the way the people intended it to be. And actually, the charter is more for an appointed chief than an elected chief. And I feel like that. I know I feel that way as an elected person or as a citizen that votes. I'd like to see it where the chief runs this department. And I believe that's what the people want.
What do you think is the biggest strength of the Sallisaw Police Department, and what is the biggest weakness?
Well, I think the biggest strength of the police department is the officers. We've got a bunch of good guys down there and gals. We've got a bunch of good officers. And the second part of that is the Sallisaw Police Department has a very good equipment and training budget. It gives them the opportunity to get the most advanced training and educational assistance that they need to stay current. And I believe that we need to continue that and even focus more onto it into the future. As far as the weakness, the weakness comes back to maybe that the chief isn't able to manage the operations of the department the way he should be able to, just because of the charter issues. And if we can get that cleared up, I think then it'll be a strength instead of a weakness.
You're listening to Lunch Break with the Candidate. We're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be back after a message from our sponsors.
This Lunch with the Candidates interview is brought to you by Diamond Express, Merrill Check Cashing and Storage, National Bank of Sallisaw, Peters Agency Care Management, Sallisaw Lumber, and Right Home Services. Now for the conclusion of the interview.
And we're back with Lunch Break with the Candidates right here on the Mix 105.1. Now back to Sallisaw Chief of Police candidate Terry Franklin. Describe 2 or 3 accomplishments during your career in law enforcement you think have been most significant.
Well, one of the biggest for me was when I got hired by the Sallisaw PD. It was an honor because this is my home, and I was proud to be able to be a policeman here in Sallisaw. And I've made this my career for the last 25 years. During that time, I've done quite well for myself. I've worked my way from patrolman all the way up to administrative captain, and I put in 25 years. And when I retired, I went from there, and I went to work as an investigator for the sheriff's office. And then when the opportunity came about for me to run for this position, that's another accomplishment I would like to see through.
So, Mr. Franklin, tell us, why are you running for Sallisaw Chief of Police?
Well, after getting hired by the Sallisaw Police Department, it was always a dream of mine to run for chief someday. And the dream has come true this year. And if I'm elected, it will be an honor to lead the Sallisaw Police Department to the future. I think it's an honor to just get to run for this position. And that's why I'm for an elected position. It's no different than an elected council or mayor. It's an honor to ask the people to support your views and your beliefs, and hopefully that they'll go and elect you, and that way you can try to lead this department or whatever you're running for into the future.
Is there any additional information that you would like to add to this interview or that you believe our listeners need to know?
Well, Kyle, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to KXMX 105.1 for bringing these questions to us. I'd also like to thank the listeners that are out there listening today. And I'd also like to thank my opponent, Sandy Gardner, for running for this office also. I decided to seek the chief of police office because I believe that the citizens of Sallisaw deserve the very best protection and services from from the police department. And if elected, I will focus on community policing. And with over the 25 years of experience, I can do that job as the chief of police here in Sallisaw. I'd like to ask everyone out there to remember to vote on February 11th, 2014. And I'd especially like to ask you to vote for Terry Franklin. And if you do need a ride to the polls or anything, you'd be more than welcome if you give me a call at 775-0067. I'll be glad to help you get to the polls. But then again, I'd like to say thank you and God bless each and every one of you out there.
You've been listening to Lunch Break with the Candidates. I would like to note that with each interview you hear this week, the candidates were given the same question in regards to their respective office and allowed the same amount of time to answer each question. Here at The Mix, we would like to remind you to get out and vote on February 11th, 2014 in the Sallisaw municipal election for both mayor and Sallisaw chief of police. As always, make sure you tune in on February 11th to hear live election results right here on The Mix 105.1.